This was clearly not the plan. To be embarrassed, and I ain't living up to the standard that's apparent. No room for excuses, only improvements. But sit with me a moment before you jump to your conclusions on how we got here. We can start from the top, we can start with the sacks, we can start with the drops, we can start with the shots to a target that's draped. Regardless, let me talk about what's really at stake, and that's legacy. Trying to fill the role of the one that stood ahead of me. Whole city want the one took after me instead of me, and rightfully so, my homie like that. And let them tell it about me, I'ma be right back. Exchange my struggles for a rifle, that's a light pack. And I just smile and show humility despite that. Yeah. They think I'm soft, think I'm weak. My confidence is rooted in belief. They call me the one, I live for the hype. Now they tryna tell me that the choice isn't right. Tell me, did I lose it? Well, did I lose it? I gotta be myself, don't care what they say, cause I'm the only person that can stand in the way. Tell me, did I lose it? Well, did I lose it? Once there was a man on a journey, made some fatal mistakes in a hurry, sent away from all of his worries, like succeeding what many saw was Billy Graham in a jersey, to the abyss, until he reappeared proven worthy. That was me, so I know where you been. What kind of sort of the difference is that you think it, but I knew I was him. Knew I would smack the competition that blend. Knew I would change the Carolinas and the league before the laces would spin. And it wasn't easy. They brought me back after releases if they didn't need me. And then they got you, and respectfully the whole thing just feel like a waste. A press release about a trade they tried to play in my face. 7 years in the desert with no chance of escape. And a fan base that sees it as an utter disgrace. Just be patient with them, they don't deserve it. But it's on you, you gotta earn it. They call me the one, I live for the hype. Now they tryna tell me that the choice isn't right. Tell me, did I lose it? Well, did I lose it? I gotta be myself, don't care what they say, cause I'm the only person that can stand in the way. Tell me, did I lose it? Well, did I lose it?
Yo, what's happening? This is John Farmer with the One Carolina Show, man. I appreciate y'all tapping in with me this morning. Usually, I would go premiere of a pod on a Monday evening, but wanted to do something a little bit different today. Go live as there are a few topics that I wanted to talk about, some things that happened just recently that I wanted to talk about as well. And so, yeah, man, I appreciate y'all being here this morning. I'm going to do a little bit of house cleaning first. Salute to my boy Key. What's up, man? Glad you're here this morning. Carolina Cole, what's going on? Glad you're here this morning. Reese Carolina, good rising, grand rising. Yes, sir. What's good? What's good? Man, y'all make sure to smash that like button. Let's get this algorithm popping, man, and we're going to get into these topics in just a moment. A few house cleaning things, man, I wanted to just go over really quick. So I have partnered up with a company that will be helping to promote a little more of the information that we put out here to more spaces. So now the One Carolina podcast is now available anywhere you find or download or stream your podcast. If you go to Spotify, Apple, or YouTube, wherever, you can find the One Carolina podcast available. And make sure to rate and, salute your boy out there, man. And, I'm really happy about this because I've always wanted to kind of get into the podcasting space. So, what I do here can actually be used in other places, because I myself love to listen to podcasts on, things that aren't necessarily YouTube, like the Apple Podcast platform specifically that I listen to on. And so, yeah, I'm glad to be able to, share this on a broader scale to a broader audience. And pretty excited about, some of the things coming up. So make sure you go check that out. I've got all the back catalog is getting ready to be uploaded. I think the only episode right now is episode 2 of the One Carolina podcast, the one I did with Aaron Duncan of Unnecessary Blunt in Sports. But Here within the next week, we should have all the backlog uploaded, so you'll see all of that, and then obviously every one that we do from this point moving forward. So appreciate y'all, man. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Now, obviously there's quite a few topics I want to talk about. One in particular that, I didn't even realize. It's so crazy, man. I be in my own world so much sometimes, and there are things that happen that I don't even recognize, when they become a thing, right? So, like, I'm in my own world so much yesterday, I had no idea that this whole situation was happening between Cam, Steve Smith. I saw some other former players, Jeff Schwartz, Charles Johnson, all that kind of stuff about a clip that it came out, that where Cam was talking about, getting drafted in 2011 or whatever. And we're going to go over that. We'll go over that. We're not going to do it right this second, but trust me, we are going to go over that. I know some people, would choose not to cover it. Me, I'm one of them people, man, like, look, I see it from both angles. So yeah, we're going to talk about it. But the first thing I wanted to talk about, just to start it off, was the bowl, man. I wanted to see what you guys thought about it. I thought this Super Bowl was a great opportunity to see a couple of things. Number one, the 3-4. Vic Fangio's defense is very similar to the defense that we run. I think the philosophies of what they want to do there, or what they did there, and what we would want to do here are very similar. Ajiro Vero doesn't blitz much. Very little at all, as a matter of fact, right? And there was 0 blitzes in that entire game. If you can match energy with a front four and dominate at that point of attack, dropping 7 into coverage, you can have your way. There's really not much you can do with it. Now, some quarterbacks are able to adjust to that, right? That's going to be the next step in Patrick Mahomes' career, is that pre-snap recognition of things that you might think that they're doing that they don't, and you start seeing ghosts because you're anticipating the pressure that never comes, right? Except for what you see on the front four. And I looked at it, I was just thinking to myself, like, man, this is fascinating because, one, there's a few players on their team that could become available for us. Guys like Milton Williams, dog, by the way. And me personally, and I was talking to Keeb about this yesterday, I said, man, I think the first order of importance, and I've said this, I've been on record saying this, for this defense, you have got to shore up the nose tackle position. You have to, right? So I know that most of their base defense yesterday was, the nickel, but still, like, you still have to have that cornerstone nose tackle to be the anchor of a 3-4 defense. So would I go out and pay Milton Williams crazy money? Not so sure. I mean, after yesterday's effort, I don't know what crazy money looks like, but, you are only as good as the last thing you put on tape. And, boy, seeing him dunk, you know what I'm saying, like, after that fumble recovery, and look, the bag going to be there for him if he want it. It just depends on who's going to give it to him, right? Would Carolina do that? Should Carolina do that? I don't know. It depends on the asking price, right? Because there's some other guys out there, Jaron Reed from Seattle, there's – or even if you decide to go that way in the draft, right, and promote, a younger player and start developing someone like that, from that perspective, you got that too. So there's many different angles that you can go to shore that position up, right? Or at least to me, I would like, though, from a free agency perspective, that's an area where I would probably lean more on a veteran, because if you bring someone in that has that, cachet already, then it's only going to help elevate whoever you decide to draft with the 8th overall pick, if indeed you go defense in that position. And then I look at somebody like Zach Bond. Zach Bond's a one-year guy. Now, granted, Zach, the biggest bet on yourself situation that you could think of. And I'll tell you another thing I walked away with, y'all. This was crazy, man. I really walked away thinking to myself, like, man, just how close was we to becoming a version of this? Like, man, when we went and found Frankie Louvu, you know what I'm saying, moved him out off-ball linebacker, and he became great. I think he kind of played sort of that position in New York, but I'm not entirely sure. But I know with us, he went and got a bag somewhere else because of his work and what we did as far as his development as an off-ball linebacker here. And it's like, we had situations that look like that we could become a version of what we just saw with Philly. Even with, now I'm not calling Sam Darnold Jalen Hurts, so please don't get me twisted. And I'm not even saying that the version of Sam Darnold that we saw this year could have been that. What I am saying, though, is that 7-10 season, that version of Sam Darnold could it possibly have been a version of Carolina that you didn't really want to see because of the defense that our defense and, the running game and all that kind of stuff? Yeah, So I think we have a chance to potentially build something very similar, which is why many people, I've seen a lot of mocks here recently as far as the Zach Bond situation is concerned. I've seen a ton of mocks of people telling us to go after Jalen Walker, right? Because Jalen is multifaceted, right? Now, I personally would love to see us draft a player who is going to be like, I like guys that can move around, no doubt. But I'm in this situation for me personally, I'd probably much rather see someone that's more solidified in their position. Someone like Mike Green, for example, right? Like Mike Green's not an off-ball linebacker. He is an edge or outside linebacker, 3-4, whatever, and that's his spot, right? You could bring in Jalen Walker, right? And yes, can he play edge? Sure. Can he play off-ball linebacker? Absolutely. But I would like for it to be like, hey, this is your position. Solidified. That's where you are, right? Become great at being just that. Because I think that we've taken a risk on some guys that are kind of that tweener. Could be this, could be that. Didn't really work out in our favor too well, right? So I'd like to see something a little bit more solidified. So check out the chat real quick. Good morning, Antonio. Carolina Cole said, I hated how Cam said he was drafted to a team of losers. Oh, we're going to get to that. So we'll get to that in just a few. But finishing this, like, here's another thing that I found fascinating. And this is something else we'll get to in just a few. I also found fascinating and loved what I saw from the defense and how it exposed the thing with Pat that didn't necessarily happen with us, right? So I'm getting to this a little bit earlier than I planned to, but I'm going to talk about this a little bit, and then we'll go a little bit deeper on this when we watch an actual video of him talking about it. But the pre-snap recognition, we saw it from Josh, we saw it from Cam, right? Two situations where a defensive, like, schematically something was provided to you, and the response, the way you've seen it dictated the response. I've got to answer for it. You do this, I'll answer this way. You do that, I'll answer this way. Now, granted, when pressure is pressure, it's kind of hard to do that, right? Like it becomes, I'm not going to say impossible, but it's hard to have time for your answers if the pressure is so immense. But there were times in that game where the pocket was clean and you're bailing out of clean pockets. There were times where you stepped up into pressure. So you could see that there's still an area of growth that Patrick has to go through. And granted, look, when you're Pat, man, and when you're the Chiefs, you get everybody's best, like week in and week out, right? You got the target on your back all year long. You play more of a season than anybody's played. You've gone to 3 straight Super Bowls, which is a feat in and of itself. But yeah, maybe that some of that and all the extra stuff that's going on doesn't necessarily lend its time for development, right? Maybe we take what you already do really, really well and we just continue to do that as opposed to taking your game to the next level. I heard a story, Tom Brady was talking about this in the pregame, and he talked about how, it can become really difficult to get so locked in to what you do that your 2007 moment happens, right? Where you come in thinking like, there's just no way we lose to this team. They were 9-7 in the regular season. Like, there's no way we lose this game, right? And the pressure is so intense that you keep a team that scored the most points at that time in NFL history, that he, at that point in time, had the most passing touchdowns in NFL history, and you reduce them to 14 points. Hold them to 14 points in the whole game, right? So you go back to the drawing board if you're Tom. And granted, they didn't get there again for a whole nother, well, they didn't win another one. They got there again, but they didn't win another one for a whole 10 years. But you had he talked about like the way that I prepared for Super Bowls from that point forward. It was like, I'm not even really enjoying the moment. I'm really locked into preparation. Like he talked about when he was with Tampa and they beat Kansas City. He said, man, I knew what they were going to do before they knew they were going to do it, right? And I saw clips of Bryce Young talking about the two teams, Philadelphia, and I'm sure y'all have all seen the clip, right? And we'll use a video to reference that point. But I saw that clip of Bryce Young talking about the two defenses and how they couldn't be more different. And the way that he was just kind of walking this down, man, you could just see in the face of the people that he was talking to, like, oh, man, like, he get it. Like, he going to be all right. He going to be all right. So make sure y'all smash that like button real quick for me. Tell me, did I lose it? Hey, salute the Pop. So, speaking of we going to be all right, I'm only going to touch on this for a pause for literally 1 second, just because, it is a Super Bowl polarizing moment. I thought the Kendrick performance was good. I didn't think it was great. I guess because I'm a fan and I like B-side records, you know what I'm saying? Like, I thought GNX was a really dope album. Very West Coast, very, if you go back, that sound, obviously Mustard is the one that kind of cultivated that sound to become what it is today. But the sound originates more from, the Bay Area with old school rapper named Mac Dre. Some people may be familiar with. But Mac Dre, that whole Bay Area, kind of hyphy, type sound or whatever, I liked it. I was actually surprised that he went through and actually did the Not Like Us. Of course, I saw all the imagery. I got a lot of the, substance in the back, I guess whatever the message he was trying to send, some of that stuff, that was cool as well. I just thought it was a really good moment for hip hop. Like, if you've ever been to a rap show, then right? As someone who has in the past performed rap music, as someone who still currently is active rapping, not nearly to the capacity that I used to be. But yes, I mean, I'm not, Pop just said it. Tell me, did I lose it? The title song of my channel is indeed a song that I wrote. And so when you think about, like, for me, when I see the breath control to go through, I mean, he was adding new like verses into the, songs and having to match that for FCC, things or whatever like that. Like, it was impressive. I mean, I personally could have went without the Not Like Us, it is not on some like I'm Team Drake or nothing like that, because I like both of these dudes. Like, I think both of these brothers make really good music. So it's not that I was necessarily like I had to see that or didn't want to see that, but I will say this: the moment was incredible. The moment was incredible. The walk off, game over. You know what I'm saying? Like, the battle is officially over. Does that mean that it's completely over for Drake? I don't think so. I do think this though. If you do come back, if you can come back from this, if there's a way even to come back, I need bars. I don't need no pop records. I need your contribution to hip hop in the way of 444. I need something where you talking about something, right? Because I think you have that capability to do so. I need your version of Good Kid. I need your version of Mr. Morale or, or whatever. That's if you have it in you to do that, judging by some of the moves that I've seen him make as of recent, I wouldn't say so, because you're playing the social media game. But look, on the biggest of stages, the battle is over. I think we can safely say this was probably the most impactful diss song in history. To me, it would have been a toss-up between No Vaseline and Hit 'Em Up. But, hey, salute to K-Dot. Man, you did your thing, man. Hey. Appreciate it. QJ says, shout out to SZA. Baby girl was looking thicker than frozen peanut butter. Hey, man, look, the one thing I didn't like, man, I felt like, bro, that's SZA. To me, if you're going to do what they did with SZA as far as like the short amount of time that she actually got on stage and all that kind of stuff, in my opinion, I feel like you don't announce her like when you start doing all the like promo and everything like that. Like, she comes out as a surprise artist. Because my expectation is like, all right, if you giving me SZA, I'm about to hear some Control records, right? Like, I thought, okay, maybe she dropped the Love joint and Travis Scott come out as a special. You know what I'm saying? Like, when it was like, yo, we got mad specials or whatever like that. Like, I just felt like that portion of it was underwhelming. Like, SZA, to me, should have had more opportunity to have a bigger set. I felt like even All the Stars, like, that record just didn't feel as big as that record really is. Like, that's a huge record, right? And it felt like things went kind of lackluster once they hit Luther, once they hit the, All the Stars, things just kind of went down a little bit. And then the energy obviously got brought back up with Not Like Us. So, yeah. Helen Keller's dog, man, that's a wild name, bro. Said, my only gripe with the halftime show was I wish the mic volume was higher. Yeah, I agree. It was a little hard to hear him. I have a weird TV, so like my TV sometimes, so I was listening to it on my phone through the YouTube TV, and I was watching it on TV as well. And it did sound it sounded muffled. But I think part of that is just because like Kendrick's voice doesn't necessarily project. And if they go too high, then you mess up the volume. And I just think it was one of those things where I don't know that they could have got the levels right anyway. But I did see, and this was really interesting. So Fox had a terrible camera angle, horrible camera angle, where they were doing the halftime show, the usual Kurt Menefee and all those guys doing the halftime show, and you could literally look behind you and see the Buick Grand National or the GNX or whatever sitting back there, and Kendrick on the top of it, like they're getting his mic ready at that time, right? And it was just like, I didn't really like seeing that, but you know that it was the closest thing to, because if you're at a live show, like you're gonna see some of that stuff. Like they can't black out everything, but I just thought that was kind of wild to see. But anyway, shout out for you for liking my post about drama, Nakari Leggett. Shout out to you for liking my post about not talking about the drama. I appreciate it. I did. Oh, salute. I'm sorry. Like, I'll be honest with you. I'm going to talk about it. Now, I'm not going to talk about it in the perspective of bashing either one of these guys, but here's how I am going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about it because I feel like the whole clip needs to be played in its context. And depending on how the context comes out will depend on how people see it. But I think it's important to have these, like, one of the things that I love, and Nakari, thank you so much. If I did like your post, I probably was liking it because I agree with your perspective of like not really talking about it from a dramatized perspective, right? And what do I mean by that? Because what I could do as a content creator, which I don't do because it's just not my style, and salute to those that do it, is I could give my perspective on Cam or on the responses to Cam's. And look, like I said, we're going to talk about it. So, trigger warning, salute to you, Nakari. I appreciate you. But just to be fair, if it's not your cup of tea, like, I'm sorry, but yeah, we covering it. But I'm not going to cover it without respect. So I'll say that. I'm not going to call nobody out of their name. I might not agree with some of the points that are made on either side, but I'm certainly not going to like do anything that would compromise. Like, I ain't trying to build no relationships with nobody. That's the one thing about my platform. Like, look, if I rock with anybody, if I work with anybody, I'm going to say what I got to say, right? But considering that I am a Christian, everything that I do is led with love, number one. And number two, I make sure that no unwholesome talk, as best as I can, comes out of my mouth, right? And if it does, and it upsets others, then I will apologize and work accordingly. But I'm also not bought either. I'm not paid. I'm not going to, change any takes or anything like that because of relationships. Nah, we're going to get our takes off. So salute to Doug. I'm not going to tell him what we got coming, Doug, but we got something coming. Pause. So, yeah. Anyway, all right. So, what was the next thing? Oh, we already talked about the Super Bowl. All right, so lo and behold, I'm going to go through some of these comments real quick, just to backlog, because I don't think I got to everybody. Let's see. Good morning, chat. Actually, I did get to everyone. Okay. All right, so let's do it. Might as well. We already here. So like I said, me in my cocoon last night, right? And I have no idea what's going on. I'm not really paying attention to X. I'm spending more time watching the Lakers. I'm chilling with my kids. You know what I'm saying? Just doing the normal dad thing, right? And I see this one tweet, and I'm like, wait, what? And what was it? And it says, I watched and listened from afar as you, Cam Newton, talked about the Panthers. None of us are perfect. Yes, we were 2-14 before you blessed us with your presence. The way you have talked about the Panthers lately, I'm very disappointed. I wish you nothing but the very best. I'm done. And I was like, what is going on? What in the world is going on? Shocked. Right? Super shocked. Hey, Nakari, I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah. Shocked to say the least. So then I start doing digging. I start going through and trying to find out, okay, where did this come from? What happened? And then I remember, like, you know what? I saw that clip the other day. And I didn't really, it was one of those things I saw and it was in passing. I was just like, I didn't really think anything of it, because the one thing I will say about Cam is this. I don't think Cam oftentimes means things from a malicious perspective, right? But I do think that he is not the best orator, right? And he's getting better with it, much better. I think the version of Cam that we see on 4th and 1, the version we see on his podcast, is the more authentic him, where he can kind of speak freely, right? But whenever he has to kind of hold back and be more PC with his takes, sometimes certain things will slip, and he's not necessarily saying it from a malicious perspective, but it just comes out. It may sound that way, right? If that makes sense. I think we all know people like that if you put them in front of a more quote unquote corporate situation, like when Cam is on First Take versus when I hear Cam on 4th and 1, couldn't be more different, right? And I think this was one of those situations because even on Trav's podcast, like you still had to be a little bit careful because, there's certain regulations. Like you can't say certain, like, not that you can't have certain takes, but you can't say certain words with those takes, right? Like the cussing and stuff like that, you're bleeping a lot of that stuff out, right? So, like I said, I did my digging. What did I come up with? Came up with the clip. And I wanted to see and listen to, and we're going to do this. We're going to listen to and react. So look, I'm one of those people. Yes, I pause in between, the commentary, and I do speed it up a little bit just so I don't get clipped, copyrighted, or whatever. So just bear with me. But we're gonna go through this because this is the entire clip in context, and we're gonna see because one of the arguments that I've been seeing people make is like, because I like I said, over the last 10, 15 hours, I have been doing nothing but reading comments and listening to different people's takes on this to see, all right, am I being unbiased? 1, and 2, is the context really there for us to be like, hey, he didn't mean it in a certain way, or did he really just mean what he said and just, it is what it is, right? So we gonna allow the context to be the context from the full clip itself. Let's get to it.
How did you handle the pressure of being the top pick?
Well, first, let me do this. If y'all can hear this in the chat, type a 1. Somebody type a 1 real quick and just let me know that y'all can hear the audio from the video.
Let's put it in perspective. You're the top.
All right. I'm going to wait for y'all for a second because I just want to make sure that y'all can hear it. Somebody type a 1 in the chat. Just hit me with a 1 real quick. I just want to make sure y'all can hear the audio because I don't want to go deep into this commentary. I've done this before where I've gone deep into a commentary and, the whole thing was trash because you couldn't hear anything that was going on. So, yeah, just give me a 1 in the comment or yes or whatever, and then I'll keep going. I'll wait for somebody. Bet. 1 in the comment. Let's go.
Pick. Because what?
Start it over again.
Let's put it in perspective.
How did you handle the pressure of being the top pick?
Well, let's put it in perspective. You're the top pick because what?
League play.
No. You're looking at it from a personal situation. I'm talking about from the professional situation.
All right, right there. Let's stop. Remember what I talked about already about context, right? Or excuse me, oration. I didn't ask you that. I didn't ask you about the organization. Travis answered it right. Hey, look, your play is what got you to the top pick. You're already going towards the Panthers, which tells me one thing in particular, right? Cam and the Panthers have some issues. We know that. I mean, that's not something that we have to necessarily dig to find like a real answer on, right? Or to find, because we've heard it, right? But you immediately go to that before you even answer the question about you and the pressure for you being a top pick, regardless of the organization that you fell to or that you happen to get drafted by, that fell to you, that had a terrible season, that got to the point where they picked you, right? It was because of your play. Let's keep going.
You're the top pick because that was the worst team in the NFL the year before. You know? You see what I'm saying?
Fact.
So for me, it wasn't just I wanted to be the number 1 pick, yes, but understanding like, if I'm going to the worst team, our guys in the locker room ready to win right now. What Jaden Daniels did as the number 2 pick last year, that's not normal.
Yeah, that's not normal.
You see what I'm saying? CJ Stroud, that's not normal. And those are quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. You could potentially be the first pick, but bro, you have no way of impacting the game like a quarterback does. Right.
That's a fact. It's not normal. What I will say, though, is that it speaks more to what those guys are as players than the circumstance itself, right? Here's what I could do. I could say, well, they did get a defensive coordinator coach that was just on a Super Bowl team. They didn't win the bowl, but he was on there. They did bring in some players. They drafted really, really well. They came and double-dipped in the first round, drafting C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson, right? Shoring up your defense. And they did have some pieces there, right? They had a few pieces. They had Laramie Tunsil, a great left tackle, right? And also, if we're just being real, they had a division that was very, it wasn't like the best division on earth, right? So some of those wins came by way of like, man, we just got better players at the right time, right? Or you go to the Jaden Daniels situation. You know, they brought in Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, Jeremy Chin. They bring in a Super Bowl winning, Super Bowl been to defensive coordinator, and a defensive coordinator on the team that had just previously went 12-5 or 12-4, 12-5, I should say, 3 straight years in a row in Dan Quinn, right? So it's not as if you didn't bring in, like the situations helped, right? Or we can go to one like Andrew Luck, for example. Andrew Luck gets drafted to a team that's 2-14. Very similar situation, by the way, right? What were they the previous years? Because that's important. To me, on Smitty's side of his argument, that's part of the context. It's like, what were we prior? It's okay to look at what we were the year that we got you because of circumstance, right? What was the circumstance? Jake Delhomme, granted, had a terrible showing against Arizona. And we're going to break that down in a second. I'm going to keep talking. I'm going to keep listening first because I'm going to really deep dive that point in just a moment.
You can lock down the number one receiver. You can make impact plays on offense all you want, but it's still not like a quarterback. My issue is when I was the first pick, I went into a locker room of losers. Just honest. Like, guys didn't know how to win. Guys didn't know how to prepare. They didn't take themselves serious to realize, like, yo, we was 2-14. There was a lot of 2-14s in the mentality of those guys. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's like, bro, the 3 years that I was in college, I won a national championship at the University of Florida, had to transfer, went to JUCO, won a national championship there, went to Auburn for 1 year, won a national championship there. Then I left and went to the NFL, and you're trying to put me in a 2-14 situation? Like, no, bro, I want to win yesterday. I'm here.
All right. So this is where I'm split. Because on one hand, I agree with Cam. I'm coming to a terrible situation. And I do feel like sometimes, like, I really wish Cam could see himself the way that everybody else sees him. Like, I remember hearing a commentary one time about Eminem. And, you know, Jay-Z dropped the album 444. I'm sure y'all are familiar with it. Where it was like, he was just talking about a lot of life stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, nobody win when the family feuds. Story of OJ. You know what I'm saying? Stuff like that. It was kind of one of those, like, grown-up rap albums where you're just talking about life stuff, right? What has Jay-Z never really done since he, you know, got to this point in his career? Outside of the song that he did, I Got the Keys, and really that was only just because he was shooting back at Drake. I've never really had to tell you how great I was, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's unfortunate because the league doesn't necessarily get, or the media, I guess you should say, from his perspective, doesn't give him the kind of love that he feels like he has earned, right? Because he has. Through the lens of the Carolina Panther fans, of course, he's earned that, right? But, like, I don't necessarily need for you to know that. You know what I'm saying? Like Eminem, rap god. I'm going to go basically just tell you how great I am as a lyricist, how well I can rap and everything. It's just like, bro, have you, like, what are you going on? What's going on in your life right now? You know what I'm saying? Like, we want to know about that. Like, tell us a little bit more about, and of course, when you get to, like, recovery and stuff like that, like, he sort of does that. And then, like, the, what was the album he dropped? Oh, gosh, I can't remember. But you start to get a little bit more of that because I think he's hearing the fans say, like, yo, we want to hear more about what you got going on, right? So this latest album, you know, that he dropped, Death of Slim Shady, you started to get a lot of that, right? And he went back to what his core was because that's what, you know, people loved him for, right? And that was a much better effort than, you know, hearing you, you know, wrap circles around people because we know you can do that, right? I don't necessarily need to hear that, right? So that's one thing for his side. The other side is this, though. Yeah, we picked you. We're a 2-14 team. We would hope that something that you have done so great in all those spots that you just mentioned, Blinn Junior College, Florida before that, you know what I'm saying? Auburn, high school, all those championships you won there. We would hope that some of that would rub off on us, right? You bring in that mentality here to us because we want to be great here. That's why we picked you. You know what I'm saying? So, like, to come into a situation, I can understand if you sitting next to guys and, like, you got dudes in the locker room talking about, like, Cancun and all that kind of stuff, like, you know, and you don't want to have that mentality, right? But part of what you're brought in here to do is become that force multiplier, not just on the field, which is why I've always had a pushback about this whole game manager versus game changer argument, right? Tom Brady said it himself. There is no better honor that you could give a quarterback than to be called a game manager. Why? Because I'm managing the game. I'm not just managing the game. I'm managing personalities, man. I watched Jalen Hurts on the sideline earlier this year. Look, People look at the situation with A.J. Brown and seeing the book on the sideline. That was hardly the first time that this kind of stuff has happened. Man, when he was in the media, that same game where he was in the media and they asked him, hey, what's wrong with this team? Passing. That's what he said. That's a shot directly at Hurts. And who called him out about it? Brandon Graham, who just came back. Now he a hero. Hey, I've been on the Super Bowl championship team, bro. What are you doing? You know what I'm saying? Like, you need to chill out, right? And he had to come out and apologize about it, but he meant what he said. Why? You got Jalen Hurts on the sideline trying to calm you. Hey, fam, look, it's going to be all right. I'm coming to you. I promise you. Managing, not just the game, managing them personalities too. That's part of it, right? So we know you can be great. We saw Jalen's greatness. You know what I'm saying? We saw it, right? Jalen, like, not for nothing. I know that people got Jalen messed up, bro. For real. People got Jalen messed up, right? College football national championship with Oklahoma. Asked them to win the last time they've been since he left. They got him messed up, right? Or not, excuse me, not national championship, but the playoff, the college football playoff. But the point is this. If you're managing the game, you're also managing personalities, right? So yeah, when we bring you in to a 2-14 situation, we're hoping that some of that can rub off on us, right? And it did. You lifted the team from 2-14 to 6-10. It worked. It didn't work necessarily right away in your favor, but at the same time, what you brought to the table helps cultivate this so that it can work in later years as it did. So I understand Smitty's point, and I get how Cam could feel like, yo, man, I'm coming. I don't want that loser stuff. Get out of here with that. I'm not trying to hear that. I know y'all probably talking in the chat like crazy. I haven't listened or looked at it yet, so I'll get to it in a moment.
Here to win. I'm here to win Super Bowls. So when your intensity is like that, and you talking to a cat that's like, man, I can't wait to go to Miami. Huh? Miami? Huh? What are we doing? You know what I'm saying? Like we all, it was a culture shock for me, because the games don't mean a lot to a lot of people in the league like you would expect. It's just money. You know what I'm saying? Not everybody has capabilities to be impact players. Yeah. They're just players. Yeah. So
see, and that's, to me, that's one of the things right there. Right. Not everybody has the ability to be an impact player. They're just players. But to me, mentality, and he's kind of saying that here, and maybe that's what he's really trying to say, because it sounds like you're talking more about ability and not necessarily mentality, right? But maybe you're talking about both. But to me, when you look at a guy like Zach Bond, right? I was a rotational, like, edge player, situational pass rusher in New Orleans. And I go to a situation where coaching is much different because they're not pursuing, they're not chasing, man. And that's where I hope that Carolina eventually gets to. I hope that that's part of what comes out of all of this. No more pursuit, right? In the wrong direction. Trying to find the core position so that you can build out everything else. Now we got core beliefs. We just building on top of it. That's what they got in Philly. Philly been riding off that first Super Bowl win since it happened. That's how they was able to get back twice and win one. That's how they've been able to have 10-win consecutive seasons. That's how they was able to pay a quarterback multiple millions of dollars and still draft Jalen Hurts in the second round. And then he ended up replacing that guy, right? Because we've been riding off the high because we saw it. I saw what it takes. GM saw what it takes to get to this point, and I'm going to bring in people that can fit that bill. And if you can't, you're out of here. They flipped the entire secondary. People were older. Contracts came up. They get Quinyon and Cooper DeJean. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and they kept an old dog, Darius Slay. Flipped the whole thing, right? That's what you love to see. I love to see that. Some of these guys are not the super talented guys. They're not the super impact players. Some of them are just players. Zach Bond was just a player. But when he got to Philly, they recognized like, yo, man, you see what he just did? Similar to how we waxed poetic about Abdul Carter. He did the same thing. Zach Bond was statistically the best middle linebacker. He got robbed for Defensive Player of the Year this year. Right? Abdul Carter. Go look at his stats as an off-ball linebacker the past couple of years. He was okay. He wasn't even in the conversation. Coming into this season, who was the number one edge rusher? People thought that James Pierce could go number one overall. Boy, it's funny how them tables turn. A year can change everything. Cam knows that all too well. Look at what he did at Auburn, right? Look at what he did from 2014 to 2015, 7-8-1 to 15-1, right? Sometimes you need those just player guys that can elevate their level of play. Kurt Coleman wasn't no superstar until he got to Carolina. He was good. 7 picks good? Nah. Let's keep going.
Realizing that, transitioning that, how can I still keep myself going in a room full of mediocre players that just like, they just happy to be on the team? You know what I'm saying?
Okay,
Yeah, no,
I got something I want to add on that, because you hit on a lot of points, interesting points that a lot of people don't look at from the outside lens. And your path, like I said, man, you winning at the highest level. Florida, winning. Blinn, winning.
Right.
Auburn, winning. Go to Carolina, they had just finished losing, right?
Right.
How do you think that impacts, like with Trav being what he's been going to, a Jackson State and turning that thing up, then having to go to a Colorado, being 1-11, and who knows, Lord knows when the last time they won before they got there,
Right.
and him helping turn that around. How does that think that prepared and helped him for what he's about to step into
Okay.
versus your route?
And that's a great question. And I'll tell you this way. How long were you at Collins Hill?
4 years.
You was a 9th grader at Collins Hill.
9th grade, yeah.
Okay. So this is your next opportunity that you will be there probably longer than 4 years. Think about it that way.
Okay.
You was at Jackson State how many years?
1.
You was at Colorado for how many?
2.
2, right? So that's 3 years. This franchise that you're about to go to, you will be there, God willing, right? You'll be there for more than 4 to 5 years. How do you understand your growth as a person and as a player?
All right. So they don't really go – pretty much the meat and potatoes of this is over at this point. But I do want to just circle back real quick to the point in contention.
How did you handle the pressure of being the top pick?
Well, let's put it in perspective. You're the top pick because what?
When you play.
No. You're looking at it from a personal situation. I'm talking about from the professional situation. You're the top pick because that was the worst team in the NFL the year before. You see what I'm saying? So for me, it wasn't just I wanted to be the number 1 pick, yes, but understanding like, yo, if I'm going to the worst team, our guys in the locker room ready to win right now. What Jaden Daniels did as the number 2 pick last year, that's not normal.
Yeah, it's not normal.
You see what I'm saying? CJ Stroud, that's not normal. And those are quarterbacks. You could potentially be the first pick, but bro, you have no way of impacting the game like a quarterback does. Right. You can lock down the number 1 receiver, you can make impact plays on offense all you want, but it's still not like a quarterback. My issue is when I was the first pick, I went into a locker room of losers. Just honest, like guys didn't know how to win. Guys didn't know how to prepare. They didn't take themselves serious to realize like, yo, we was 2-14. There was a lot of 2-14 in the mentality of those guys, you know?
All right. Now back to it. Okay. Caleb said it. Cam leaves too much up to interpretation in his comments. And I think that's where that's where people got lost. So the context is the context. The clip was the clip. I know a lot of people tried to say, well, it's a viral clip because the way people tried to frame it up, the people that came to me with it was like, yo, they sliced up this, and this, and then he said that, and they kind of put that in there and made that the highlight so it would kind of draw more attention. Nah, the clip was the clip. All they did was they cut 10, 15 seconds out of it and made that whole conversation, but that portion of it, the clip. And that's what I think when Smitty, Charles Johnson, and all these other people that saw it, that's where they got stuck. And they was like, wait, what? Full of losers? Huh? So now I want to look at it from Smitty's perspective. Let's go back to Smitty's tweet real quick. I'm actually answer a few comments first, or talk about a few comments first. So What's Up Doug said, this is the only thing I'll say about Smitty and Cam relationship has been on the rocks for years. We know Cam has a strong ego. Some people don't like it. Smitty and Cam are both alpha males. I couldn't agree more, right? Caleb Dixon said, I don't necessarily agree every game managing quarterback is not the leader like Hurts to manage personalities, especially with the coach he has. Good point. And that was that. John Morales said Cam never really answers the question. I would agree with that because from the very beginning, he wasn't asking him, hey, man, how tough was it to go to an organization that was 2-14? He asked him, how tough was it for you to acclimate yourself to the NFL being the number 1 overall pick because of the pressures that come with that? And Cam, I'm not saying he deflected there, but he didn't necessarily answer it in the way that it was asked, right? But again, like we said, not necessarily the best in oration, but still very valuable information nonetheless, right? So let's go back to Smitty's tweet. Smitty said, I've watched and listened from afar as you, Cameron Newton, talk about the Panthers. Hey, look, Smitty had time today, boy. None of us are perfect. Yes, we were 2-14. Before you blessed us with your presence. The way you have talked about the Panthers lately, I'm very disappointed. I wish you nothing but the very best. Psych. No, I'm just playing. Anyway, make sure y'all smash that like button. We got 70 people watching between 2 platforms. We got 21 likes. Smash the like button for you, boy. Appreciate it. All right, back to it. So I thought to myself when I saw that tweet, I was like, you know what? What could Smitty's perspective really be on this? How could he really view this? If, you just said all those things. Were we really that much of a losing situation, a losing mentality, or was this more of an anomaly? Sort of like I said, like Andrew Luck going into the Colts, right? The Colts identified early, we're not going to have Peyton Manning. He's got neck issues, right? We got to get him out of here. We're going to have the number 1 pick. Andrew Luck, who was, by most estimations, supposed to come out the previous year, but didn't. Could you say that that's because of the Panthers? Possibly. Who knows? Now, personally, I'm glad we drafted Cam Newton because I much more enjoyed his version of, number 1 pick play than I would have Andrew Luck, even though Andrew Luck could have had just as equal, possibly more success. Who knows, right? Even though early on, it was more successful. Seeing how you go from a 2-14 team that literally flips over to a AFC championship team in the Deflategate game in 1 year. So, yeah, do with that what you will. But when we look at this from a past perspective, what could Smitty say and make an argument for through his eyes and through his lens and from his perspective? Let's take a look. So if we go to the Carolina Panthers, let's start back, I would say at the Super Bowl season, 2003, right? So we go 11-5 and lost the Super Bowl to New England. The next season we go 7-9, and I think we lost Smitty if I'm not mistaken. Following season, we're back in the conference championship again. So that's 2 NFC championship appearances in 3 years. And we go 11-5. And Smitty wins the Triple Crown. And we have the walk-off against St. Louis. All that greatness. The next year we go 500, then a game under 500. And this is when Jake started having his Tommy John issues, right? People remember that. And then we come back and go 12-4. I remember great season, magical season, 2 1,000-yard rushing backs. We had a lot of great moments in that season too. Dante Rosario's walk-off touchdown against the Chargers in week 1. Jonathan Stewart, I think Rondé Barber's jersey's still up under the stadium. You know what I'm saying? From him face planting him, stiff arm in that game on a Monday night, I believe, right? A lot of great moments. And then we run into Arizona, who eventually went to the Super Bowl and lost. But great moment nonetheless, right? Jake Delhomme lost his mind, bunch of turnovers, and the rest is history. So then the next season, Jake comes back, but he gets hurt. And then we roll with Matt Moore. And like Cap and I talked about, Matt Moore rattled off a few wins at the end of the season. Got to be careful with that. What did we talk about that through? The perspective of Bryce Young. Hey, man, Bryce Young looked great, no doubt. But you got to be real careful with what you saw at the end of the season because sometimes even I can get a little bit too hyper because I'm old enough to remember Matt Moore going on a little bit of a run going into the next season. And then Matt Moore gets hurt, and that's how we end up at 2-14. So Smitty's context is equally as important, right? Because when I get called a loser, I have to go back because, look, it was a blanket statement. You might have been talking about, like, look, bro, you might have been talking about Legadou Nene. You know what I'm saying? You could have been talking about any of these other guys out here that you were in more closer contact with. You ain't talking about me. Can't be. Because, buddy, I was a part of 2 teams that did something that we ain't done in nobody's era since I've been here. Going to 2 NFC championship games in 3 seasons and then winning a Triple Crown that same season, right? I went to the playoffs 3 times. So did you. Salute. But didn't get back to the big games. But once. Only got there one time, right? So I got context too. When I look back at what we've done prior, and look, here's the crazier thing. We didn't have no number 1 pick quarterback. We had a cast off. Do y'all understand in this NFL, let's just say that you compared the Panthers of yesteryear, those 03 through 2009 Panthers, to the NFL right now. We basically did, and this is the equal comp, we did 1 Super Bowl appearance, 2 NFC championship appearances, 3 playoff appearances, and some 8-8 seasons with Kirk Cousins. Because that would be Jake Delhomme's comp in this NFL. We didn't do that with Pat. We didn't do that with CJ. We didn't do it with Bryce or Jalen or anybody else. We did that with Kurt. Because that would be the comp. The closest one anyway. Actually, I'll go a step further. I wouldn't even say Kurt. Because if I'm not mistaken, Jake was undrafted. We did that with Gardner Minshew. If we really, like, if we talking about the equals of how your pathway to the NFL, we caught lightning in a bottle the year you came over with Gardner Minshew, right? So part of what you got to in a 12-4 season was some of the mentality of some of those guys who were on those previous teams that brought that up and their level of play up, in addition to having you playing at your greatest level. Because when we were 1-3, who was on the hot seat? Leslie and Ron. So that would be my context from my perspective if I'm Smitty. Hey, bro, I got just as much of that mentality in me because I got it out the mud. So did you. You're superhuman, right? So, yeah, it's hard for you to come here to this situation, but the whole goal of you being here was to eventually get us to where we finally got to, which is why I say I'm split. Hey, look, if it's Nene or whoever, and I ain't trying to shoot at Nene, but if whoever it is, man, I ain't trying to hear about your Miami trips, but I guarantee you run the gamut of some of those people that responded to this video that's been circling out here, it ain't them guys, because they know what it took. They did it twice, right? Did it 3 times as far as playoffs is concerned. And then eventually some of them guys, well, I don't think any of those guys were part of the 15-1 season, but it led to that. Their presence at one point led to it. So anyway, just wanted to come in and tap in with y'all. I haven't been talking a lot and haven't been paying attention to the chat as much. Caleb Dixon said, I heard someone say maybe these comments are due to the Panthers kind of erasing him, not talking about him, nothing posted about him. I'll talk about that in a second. Nakari Leggett says, Cam answered the question like someone who is hurting. I know when I had a breakup, I would make everything my ex's fault. Yeah, that happens. So, okay, so I'll address that. Yes, I do believe that Cam is in a hurt position. Yes, I also said I heard someone say that maybe these comments were due to the Panthers kind of erasing him, not talking about him, nothing posted about him. So I had a real spirited conversation with a good buddy of mine last night about this. Salute to Brad if he's listening. And basically my take was, I think they're waiting on you, right? Now, do I know for a fact that Tom Brady had, stuff up all over the stadium outside of Super Bowl banners in his, absence to Tampa Bay? No, I don't know that. Do I know that, who else? My goodness. Tom, Peyton, Indianapolis, Drew in San Diego. Well, I wouldn't say that. I don't know. Even some of these guys that aren't necessarily quarterbacks. I think about, if we go back a little bit further, Charles Woodson, when he left the Raiders and goes on to win a Super Bowl with the Packers, does he have a lot of, he was a great, great player. He made a play that should have resulted in the Raiders going to the Super Bowl. Instead, it became what we know as a tuck rule, right? If that play is called in the direction that most people think it should have been, then Charles is in the Super Bowl, and he's a legend, which he still is, in Oakland / Las Vegas / LA or wherever they were, at the time. So, but was his information, was his pictures, was his jersey, any of that stuff, or just, random things inside the stadium at the time when he went to the Packers before he came back? I don't know. Here's what I would say. I think at this point, they're waiting for him, right? And this was some of the point, like I saw a tweet, I think it was Fetty was saying, Monty Fetty was saying that, hey, yo, he was talking to Smith. Man, look, you kind of had some smoke too for the organization after you left because you was pretty upset, right? And he admitted to that. He responded to it. And he said, look, man, you're right. The difference is that I didn't shoot at players in my absence. Like I shot at the organization. I didn't necessarily shoot at the players, which is why I believe fully how that happens, right? There's a lot of, look, Steve Smith looked about as happy as he's probably ever looked in his life in that photo. And part of my argument has always been with Cam is like, man, can you just be one of the guys? Like, could he be in this photo and not be like, I hate to say this, the center of attention. Like, could you just be present in the moment here in this situation? I don't know. I don't think that's the thing that's keeping him away from the organization necessarily. I don't think that at all. What I do think, though, is that once that retirement happens, they're going to roll out the red carpet for him. I fully believe that. Fully believe that the moment that Cam Newton retires, the red carpet gets rolled out for him. I'm anxious to see it. Caleb said, not saying they erased him, more saying that that it feels that way. I mean, I can see that, I hate that he feels that way, or that you even feel that way. Because I personally don't feel that way. I don't feel like they erased him. Because I think if that was the case, they never bring him back. You don't get the 2021 situation if Cam Newton is like completely erased from the organization. I don't see that happening. What I will say is, I think that, like, I do wonder this, because he's talked about retirement and how I wonder at this point now, like, if an employee of the company calls this out, Steve Smith calls this out publicly, right? And says, hey, I don't like how you've been talking about the Panthers lately, right? And this ain't nothing new, because I think part of this was Steve Smith's response to his, question about whether or not he would give back his MVP or, won the Super Bowl. I don't take that as a shot to the Panthers necessarily, but to people in that locker room that he's got relationships with, like, yeah, I could see like how they'd be like, really, bro, you would take that over the, over the hardware? Like, all right, cool. Weird flex, but all right. But like, as far as like his comments about how the organization didn't surround Bryce with anything, and, some of the people were talking about even, asking him to walk back some of his comments about, how he kind of flipped, when Bryce had a tough season and he came out and was like, what I'm saying? Like, it should have been Stroud and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, bro, you said you was on the team, Bryce, too. What you talking about? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, seeing stuff like that sometimes it comes off as mixed messaging. But I would be fascinated to know this now. So he still hasn't officially retired. My guess is that he would probably sign a one-day, with Carolina and retire, and when he does that, then they do everything that everybody has anticipated, that they would have done from day one. And it's going to look weird now because there's so much conversation about it that it almost will feel like, well, the Panthers are only doing this because, they feel bad for him. And I don't think that's the case. I think they would have done it anyway, especially, like I said, bringing him back. But I wonder if that's even going to happen now. And not necessarily from the Panthers' perspective, but more from his. I wonder if he would even want that at this point. So I'm also fascinated to hear how he responds to this. I'm very fascinated to hear how he responds to this, because he also responded to this right here, this picture that we're showing. He responded to this situation in Germany. And you could tell, like Nakari said, he looked hurt behind this. So who knows? All right, one more answered question before I go on to the next topic. What's up, Doug? Says the organization and Cam have to come to a common ground. He is one of the greatest to play the position, but comments like this make it seem like Cam didn't enjoy his time in the Carolinas. I couldn't agree more. I cannot wait till me and you chop it up, bro. Like, because this is stuff that I like having this kind of dialogue, because I agree. I 100% agree. But I also understand, because organizationally, we didn't always make the best decisions, right? And I think if you're Cam, like I've said this before, man, if you're watching Jalen Hurts, man, I mean, I feel like we tried to do this, but it was too late. Like, by the time that we drafted Christian McCaffrey, by the time that we drafted DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel and stuff like that, like, I feel like even that version of the Panthers could have eventually become, like, I don't think Luke Kuechly retires if none of that stuff happens. If none of those injuries happen, all that kind of stuff, I think he's still here. Not now. Well, maybe not now. Like, maybe he would have retired eventually. I think it probably been a couple of years ago. But I also feel like Carolina would have become possibly what Philly became, with better organizational structure. And you started to see that happen, and then the shoulder gets blown up. You know what I'm saying? So that kind of changed it. Because, I mean, at that point, man, we were 6-2. Like, and look, teams lose. Teams don't get smashed. But, I mean, some of these other teams have gotten smashed and gone. I mean, New York, when they won in 2007, when they won in 2011, like, these weren't like – New York was 9-7 going into that team against New England. So – and New England beat them earlier that year. So what if – let's just say hypothetically, Pittsburgh actually gets back to the Super Bowl. They would not see the same Carolina Panthers team. Couldn't be more different. It's not going to be the same team. That team, like, look, for what Bryce and Carolina was able to do against Philly, that was not the same team that what they just saw in the Super Bowl. That was a much more prepared team. Some of those experiences that they had early in the season, realizing like, hey, we got to take things more serious. We got to be more locked in. The training's got to be better. The preparation's got to be better. Like, yeah. But I do think it says a lot about where Carolina is and where it trajects to go. And that's what we're getting ready to talk about. So, all right. Last comment I'm going to read real quick for a minute. It says, Caleb Dixon, that's my man. Let me clarify. I don't feel that he's been erased either. I'm more referring to perception and how I've seen the comments and others' comments. I agree with that. Yeah, I'm rolling with that, Caleb. All right. So, once again, just want to plug real quick. If you're just joining me, I have now officially launched the One Carolina podcast on all of your streaming platforms. If you get a chance, please go and check out the One Carolina podcast. All of my backlog podcasts will be there by the end of the week. We've got one episode up right now of our past catalog, and that's the episode that we did with Aaron Duncan of Unnecessarily Bluntness Sports. Salute to Aaron Duncan. That's my man. So, yes, please go check us out. The One Carolina podcast. You'll see my crazy looking face with my crown, my kind of trademark look or whatever like that. Anywhere you can find your podcast, Spotify, YouTube podcasts, Apple Podcasts, man. I am so thankful for you guys because without you guys, none of this is possible. Thank you, and thank you. All right, back to it. So, one of the things that I really enjoyed this week during Super Bowl week, outside of the game itself, was seeing Bryce Young's promo run. Now, I'll say this with caution, and I said this earlier. I said that Bryce has to be very careful because this past season went on a tear, had an incredible finish to the season, right? Done something that no other Panther quarterback has done with 5 total touchdowns, 2 rushing, 3 passing in the history of our franchise. But seen this movie before, seen people, finish the season great. I've seen 2 things happen though. I've seen one person, Cam, who we were just talking about, finish a 7-8-1 season and lead himself to a 15-1 season. And I've seen Matt Moore finish the season at 8-8, where eventually he falls off a cliff because he gets hurt, right? So, got to be a little careful, especially when you start going on the media runs. Because last year, I said this, I told my boy Keeve this, he can testify to this if he's still here. When C.J. Stroud was in front of every single microphone, and oddly enough, what did you not see this year? I ain't seen C.J. Stroud nowheres, right? Nowhere. So, why? Because he heard what people were saying. Man, you going on this media run, you better come out here and ball out, bro. Because they're going to be on you if you don't. Right? Because everywhere where a microphone was, he was. Now, what I do love is that we got some nuggets from Bryce Young, but they were few and far between, and it was mostly the same speak that you would hear in a press conference or on any kind of media availability that he would give with the Panthers. So it wasn't a lot different. But some things were. And I loved what he did give. Right? So we're going to talk about it. So he talked about this very thing in multiple different podcasts, but I'm only going to go to one to highlight it. Because when he went to John Gruden's podcast, John Gruden got the most, I guess, big pause out of the conversation. But he talked about the difference between the Kansas City and Philly defenses both times. Right? When he was on multiple podcasts, or I would say on multiple times, right? He talked about it on TV. He talked about it with Golick Jr. on his podcast. He talked about it with us. He had a pod that he did with Jonathan Stewart and Jake Delhomme on the radio network. So we're going to check it out here.
Team rallied around you when you came back. I want to ask you about this Super Bowl because you had the Chiefs, man. I mean, you had the Chiefs in Carolina beat. You got the lead inside of a couple minutes. You went to Philadelphia, 22-16. You played pretty darn good against both of these teams. Maybe just reflect on both defenses that you studied and performed against.
Yeah, it's super interesting because schematically, defensively, they couldn't be more different. The Eagles were probably the most simple team we schemed against, and that just speaks to the level of execution they play with.
I like it. All right, let's stop right there for a second. So he talked about execution. So I think 2 things happen when this situation happens, because Bryce talked about how he talks to Dan Morgan. And I guarantee you Dan Morgan is probably asking questions sometimes. 1, hey, how you doing? Oh, my day's going well, right? 2, How do you like the scheme? How do you like the playbook? How do you feel about the coaching? You know what? I like it now. Everything's going well. Cool. What do you think about some of these defenses you're facing? The comfort level that he talks about this with and how it just kind of flows, because, you know, sometimes Bryce, when he gets like real antsy or he don't really know how to answer a question or don't want to answer something the wrong way, you start seeing this. Start doing this, start scratching the elbow, all that kind of stuff. There wasn't none of that here. When you start talking about something that you've had a conversation about multiple times, it just flows out, right? So these kind of conversations, now, look, I want to clarify something. I'm not saying Bryce is giving Dan Morgan cues on how to go draft players. But what I am saying is that there is recognition of certain things like, hey, man, when you do what you did against Philly, this team that just did that to them, okay, we know the coaching is one thing. And Dave Canales can speak to that, you know, very mightily, right? What did you see? How did you come to this conclusion of what they're doing? Well, I'm glad you asked, Dan, because some of it is your masterful coaching from the guy that you picked to coach me, and some of it is this. I'm just recognizing that they're only doing this, 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 and this. This sounds like how it used to sound when Luke would break down film, right? Because there is no superpower to this young man other than that. It doesn't exist. And when I hear him talk like this, and we'll keep going here soon, it gives me mad encouragement. Not validation, because I'm past that. I am no longer – you're not going to hear me like my time of trying to, you know, say told you so and all that kind of stuff. I ain't doing that no more because, you know, one, it could all blow up in my face, you know, and I'm prepared for that. But two, even if it doesn't, even if he comes out, let's just say he comes out and win MVP next year, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I don't know, MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, you know, the NFC Championship appearance. I mean, you know, who knows? But let's say he does that next year, right? My goal is not to come out and try to dunk on people. I got one more video I am going to do where it's more for, you know, national, you know, stuff that was said about him. But that's not yet. But I'm past the point where I'm trying to prove the point because I think he's already proved that. So here's where I'm going. Two of the things that happened this year, and we saw them on a broader scale. We saw Spags send a blitz to Josh Allen that he hadn't seen the whole game, right? And I'm not going to pull the film because I don't want to get, you know, copyright struck. But we saw that same thing happen to Bryce 2 different times. One on the 3rd down, one on the 4th, right? On a drive, especially the last drive of the scoring drive that tied the game with the 2-point conversion. And you saw his answer to it. And to me, this right here is why I am like super excited about like, yo, if they do, if the players develop correctly, if he continues his development and they bring the pieces, like 1 or 2 more pieces, somebody that can just kind of break the game open with speed, man, this is going to be a problem, man, because this dude cerebrally just sees the game. Like when he's talking about this, watch how John Gruden looks at him. Because you just know, like John Gruden does this for a living. Supposed to be bringing back the quarterback school soon, right? Or a QB, whatever it is, QB room, whatever. But you can tell when he talking to a real one, it's just that look. He like, how you know that? How you know that? Look?
It's not a ton of, it's not, they play for Michelle on normal downs, but it's not a ton of, you know, they're only really doing mainly 2 things from that. For most of those looks, they'll switch the front a little bit, but it's not, and 3rd down was by far the most simple I probably played in 2 years. And for them to play so at such a high level, like they don't rely on, you know, it's just, they have a lot of great players. A lot of great players play the system really well, and they're coached really well. And then the Chiefs being the probably pressure. I don't know the stats, but some of the most, at least I've played against, I know up there in the league, do so many different things. And honestly, I was super impressed with how they were able to have all the a bunch of different fronts, a bunch of different looks and blitzes matched behind it, and not have like almost any MEs on film. Like,
I never
crazy.
knew what coverage. When I played against Spags, they would blitz us.
Yeah.
Everybody blitzes.
Yeah.
But it wasn't cover 1B. It
Yeah,
wasn't man-to-man. It might be palms. It might be 3 deep, 3 under. They might double a receiver, distinctly take that guy out of the game the next play.
Yes.
But it was a very strategic game plan. It was not like the teams we had studied previously.
Yeah, and you know how hard it is when you're doing all that different stuff and you're changing up the system for a defender having to be in. It's hard to have to track people and do all that, and this is new. And I was watching it. I remember I watched the first game of film we played them, and after the first couple of drives, I'm like, wow, like this looks really good. I'm sure they have a bunch of busts, like you know that's probably what they have to live with is they'll give up a touchdown to get or something or 2 or 3 explosives a game because I keep watching. I'm like, dude, they keep getting this right. Like how are I'm watching the nickel be in so many different spots and have so many, but still play. And that's something I'm super impressed with. So
Look at John. John like, goddamn boy. You know what he is? That boy good. That boy good. Bryce talks fast as hell when it comes to X's and O's. It's easy to see why Tepper was blown away in those interviews. Yeah, that's a fact. That's a fact. Hey, look, if my man Doug's still in the building, I told Doug, I said, hey, man, you said something recently on a pod that I heard that we going to bring up when we link. I got that clip because I'm telling you, man, it's people talking. I can't remember who it was, said something about Vance Joseph. Vance is D coordinator out in Denver. Said, man, this little dude going to be heck. He had answers that we didn't even think he could answer. He was answering questions that we didn't think he can answer already.
I'm excited to see both teams, both defenses, both offenses. Obviously, I'm excited to watch Jay Hurts and Mahomes, both of them go up against really good defenses.
Now, obviously, context sake, this is before the Super Bowl.
It's two of the best we have in the league. And just seeing them going for the second time head-to-head, just as a fan of the game, I'm super excited.
You're a fan of the game. Do you know who Fran Tarkenton was?
Yeah, for sure.
That's who
for
I
sure.
compare you to. I mean, not because you're not 6'6", but similar size, similar style of play. I do this thing. It's got me feeling nicey. And I have this song, and I go, "Oh, have you ever seen it?"
I haven't.
What the hell's wrong with you?
I know, man.
I mean,
no,
it's a
trust
very
me. I feel like
important
I'm
thing.
really missing out right now.
Anyways, late in the year, you went to Atlanta, and Atlanta's got a chance to win a division. And you went in there. I don't know. You threw for 5,000 yards. You looked like Fran Tarkenton, man, and it had me feeling really nicey. And I was like, "Ooh!" But ending the season, 48 points, just beating Atlanta, who's in your division, got a chance to win the division, and knocking them out. That's got to give you great momentum heading into training camp.
Yeah, I'm so proud of the team towards the end of the year, and especially like you said, that game. I mean, you know how it is. You can have 1 foot out in the parking lot on that game. You know, you can wake up that morning and say in 12.
That's a fact. Hey, not for nothing. So could you have. You could have, right? Because it really wasn't up until recent where they really truly started to act like they believed in you. It could have been you, dog. Talking about mentality. That's what it is right there. Your play on the field is one thing. Your mentality is something entirely different. Hey, I might not have been ready for a personality like Deontay Johnson. And salute to that brother. I hope he, lands on his feet. But I might not have been ready for that. Y'all brought him in. He I'm forcing targets to him. I heard Adam Thielen say, man, confidence is the biggest thing that this kid has now. Like he would throw the ball to me in places where I knew I would be open, right? And before he was a little more afraid to do that. And he started to open up from a confidence perspective. Because when you get benched in a situation like he was, you ain't got no choice either but to gain confidence and play more freely or burn out or completely burn out. So I love it. I love that you didn't have 1 foot out thinking, you know what? The organization made me mad. I got 1 foot out of the organization. Forget these guys. Now, who knows? If he ball out when it come contract time, you're either going to run me the max or I'm going to go get it somewhere else. But I don't think that's going to be his mentality. I really believe that he's locked into being the best version of himself with us. I love it.
12 hours, I get to start planning my trip. And for us, throughout the whole year, Coach Canales talks about it all the time. Just finish was a big mantra for us. And I think we really embodied that. We really embraced that. I think we were trending towards the right direction. And towards last season, for us to end like that was great. And I'm super grateful because we all know the attitude that comes with it. It was great, but we have to make sure we continue that momentum. We have to parlay that into the offseason. And everyone has that attitude. We all want to get back for OTAs. We all can't wait for the season to come back and for us to continue to build. And I think no one's shying away from the work we have to do as a team. And, I think as a competitor, that's all you can ask for is guys that want to be out there, want to get better. I have all the confidence in the world in that locker room. So I'm excited to keep building.
Man, look, I love this, no doubt, but don't y'all wish sometimes it wasn't so PC? I wish he'd be like, look here, man. Y'all benched me. Y'all benched me. Man, it's up for all you. What is you talking about? I got smoke for all y'all.
Hey, Jake, can you find the last Nicey episode? I just want him to see it before he leaves.
I really want to see it.
But listen, have you met Dan Morgan?
Yes,
The
100%.
GM? He was a pain in my ass. They had Julius Peppers and Mike Rucker. They had a great defense. Chris Campbell at corner. He has come in and done a nice job assembling this team. You got that thing for him? I want you to just look at this video. I'm going to let you watch it.
I love great players. I love great players at any position. I love great players that save their best.
All right, so I want to skip forward a little bit because there was a conversation that started to happen yesterday, and salute to Dunk because Dunk actually had a response, and I'm sure he'll talk about that on his channel, so I don't want to steal his moment. But Dunk raised the question to Kurt Warner, JT from the QB school, and a few other people about the drop back or the foot placement. Bryce has kind of pedaled back, right? From the beginning, I've always thought that Bryce Young was more Aaron Rodgers than he was anybody else. And he obviously, name drops Aaron Rodgers here in a second. But I want to listen to what Gruden has to say about this because Gruden comes to the conclusion of what Gruden says about his drop back. Because I can't tell you how many times I've watched JT O'Sullivan's videos and he'd be like, man, nobody in the league is playing quarterback like this, man. Like, this is not from a perspective of like, oh, he's so great or anything like that. But the reason I wanted to highlight this is because of all the things and the reasons that we've talked about Bryce Young's benching, I think this might be one of the underlying reasons behind why it happened and why there wasn't success early on. And part of the struggle obviously was, yes, he had some struggles with the playbook. Yes, it was, everything was new. He was seeing things. He wasn't necessarily getting helped out much by the run game not being, established. But I also feel like maybe it was because of a situation that, hold on, we'll get to that. I want to skip forward because I want to go to a part where he starts talking about this in detail.
I mean, seriously. I've read about you. I've seen you. You've had a quarterback coach since you got out of the crib, right? So if you would, let me have your microphone. I just want you to stand up, act like you're in the shotgun. I'm a big believer that.
What's the best?
Let's say you're facing this camera right here, wherever you want. You're in the shotgun. Which foot do you have back in the gun?
Right foot back.
And it's like kicking me right in the face because I grew up the other way. Yeah. I grew up with Brett Favre in Montana, and when you get underneath the center to take a snap, how do you take a snap when you're under the center?
Pretty even. I'm even.
Okay. Well, now you get in the gun, and you put that right foot back, and I'll be honest with you, it drives me absolutely crazy.
This is a personal thing. There's like two people who have the right.
But I want to hear how can you put your right foot back in the gun?
How?
Why? Why do you do it?
It's easy. So, especially in quick game, it's awesome. So obviously throwing position here, so it's a lot less movement. So you can, if it's up and out quick, you can get one shuffle, you're already there versus having to.
So it's for the quick game.
It's a lot more efficient, and then it actually ends up kind of bouncing out if you're taking a deeper 7 timing from under 5-step drop. It kind of evens out where once you get back, you're ended up just taking an under center drop that you're in the same place after you.
But when you have an out route.
Right.
Okay, I'm talking a 12-yard out. Right. If you're underneath the center, you're taking a 5-step drop without a hitch.
Right, 100%.
Now, when you get into the gun and you have to convert that setup, now to me, your feet are all completely different.
Full transparency, we don't, you watch the league. It's not that doesn't happen, but it's a lot more. If you got to cater to one, you're doing a lot more of that drop back stuff from the gun. So perfect. It's kind of whatever happens there. And then if you're doing that, you take your step and you're already squared. For me, like fundamentals wise, I'm big on making sure that I can be open to whatever throw. So out to the left, for example, is probably the hardest to stay open to. So if I'm here and now I have to go back and then reopen from the right, it's a lot less efficient, a lot more waste of movement, in my opinion. Just for me, everyone has their own, I think whatever you're most comfortable with is the best. I'm not like a universal fundamental or like footwork guy. But
there it is. All right. First thing I want to say is this. We talked about this earlier. I love, people will tell you with their cues what they're most comfortable talking about, right? If you get around a group of people in your life and they become real, and it's real easy for them to talk badly about others and point fingers and all that kind of stuff, you know exactly how they spend their time, right? If I'm asking you just generic questions about life and the only thing you can point to is all the negative stuff, then it's like, dang, man, like I know how you're spending your time. You need to change up some things. Maybe you need some therapy, something like that. But you can also tell when people are really locked into what they enjoy and what they love and where they spend the majority of their time. That's what I love. Look, the great thing is that if it does become successful for this guy, especially if we measure it off of the last few games of the season and the last few games that he played when he got coming back from being benched. And we see all the stat lines, we hear all the, the crazy, numbers from that short span of time. If it starts to become more consistently successful, it will stay consistent because that he will be 100% locked in, right? Because I love doing this. This is what I do. That was the sell. Nakari said it. The sell was when he went into the meeting with David and Nicole Tepper. It's like, holy crap. Like this kid breathes, sleeps football, his position, understanding the game, all that kind of stuff. And it's easy to see how he got to the success that he got. Bryce Young was a starter as a freshman at Mater Dei. Nuts, right? That's a powerhouse program. But to the point, I also think that this could have been his demise with Dave Canales. I fully believe that this could have been part of his demise. Because just think about this. John Gruden said at the beginning of this, hey, man, you've probably had a quarterback coach, and we've heard Craig Young talk about this before. You've probably had a quarterback coach since you were 6, 7 years old. Well, guess what Gruden has, right? Because Craig was always prepping him for this position once he saw early on, like, man, this kid's got some natural talent. You know, part of it is that could you say I'm living a little vicariously through my son? Yes. Would that be unfair? Absolutely not, right? So I'm going to cultivate that talent by putting him around the best people possible. So what do they do early on? They establish things that work for him because he is an anomaly. He's undersized. Everywhere he goes, he's always going to be the smallest at that specific position, right? So we have to do things a little bit different to make you play at 6'2", 6'3", even though you're 5'10", all right? So part of that is possibly leaving yourself open with the right foot back on a drop back. When you get to the league and you got a guy like Dave Canales who's proven to help quarterbacks develop themselves, what is the first thing that he talked about with Bryce Young as far as like opportunities to improve? Footwork. The very first thing. So if I'm in camp trying to tell you like, hey, maybe try this. Maybe it's some of those old methods like Gruden was just talking about. Listen, buddy, I coach Montana. I coach Favre. I led Brad Johnson to a Super Bowl. I ain't never seen nobody do what you're doing. Chris Chandler won an MVP when I was coaching the Raiders. I ain't never seen nobody do what you're doing because it's not common. I've heard JT say that over and over again. What he does, nobody in the league does, right? Not to his benefit, to possibly his detriment. But guess what I've done with that? I was the starter at freshman at Mater Dei with that. I was a number one quarterback coming out of high school with that. I got letters to every single college you can think of. Buddy, I committed to USC, and then I ended up going to Alabama. And you know what? I didn't win a national championship, but I did what nobody else ever has at quarterback position. I won a Heisman. And then I was drafted number 1 overall. So all of that, then you get to the league, and you start to see the troubles. But if you try to change that now drastically, you're not going to get the best version of him. And I think part of what Canales, and I can't verify this. I'm no expert or anything like that. I'm only just gauging off of what I'm seeing him talk about here versus what we've seen as far as production and then eventual, things that have made him successful. Is it possible that Dave Canales early on was like, man, this kid's just not getting it. Like, he is not going to be able to turn the corner. I need you to do this in order for you to execute this that I'm putting out there on the field. And we see like, man, you're struggling. Bryce throwing these little screens, Adam Thielen, and, throwing it 3 yards ahead of him, all this kind of stuff. Some of it may be confidence. You got stuff going on in your personal life. You're dealing with, new personnel and a new system and all this other kind of stuff, right? But I also think that maybe it was, hey, man, we're trying to teach you some stuff and you're just not grasping it, man. We got to sit you down. It's just not, because I'm fully convinced, y'all, he could have worked through this. I really believe that. But maybe when you're in the classroom and you're being taught, it's like, well, coach, I've always done it this way. You want me to change what? You know what I'm saying? Listen how he's having to convince. Like, look, for Gruden, and all his mishaps, you talking about a dude, there ain't nobody more NFL than John Gruden. I've won multiple Super Bowls as a coordinator. I've been on Super Bowl teams. I won a Super Bowl as a coach. I know what it takes, son. I know what it takes. I have helped groom some of the greatest that this league has ever seen. So I know what it takes. And what you're doing is not natural. But then when we get to the end of it, you see John Gruden's like, hey, man, if you believe, and this is where I credit Dave Canales so much, because I think people who reach greatness in life understand that, what did we talk about earlier? Managing personalities. You understand that, hey, not everybody is going to be the same. And sometimes I have to change and acquiesce what I do. We're going to see this a lot in Chicago this year. Hey, Ben Johnson, salute to you. That's hometown. That's my man. But Ben Johnson, the way that Caleb plays quarterback is not what you are used to. Are you willing to change your philosophies to a degree to get the best out of him. And so far from, at least in word, not in deed, because we haven't seen it, yes. So salute to Dave Canales because, and like I said, all of this is just speculation. I don't know that none of this is true. But salute to Dave Canales because something had to change where, you know what? Hey, man, like at the end of this, John Gruden, you made me a believer. If you believe in that strong enough and you can match that with production on the field and I see it happening, do it. If that's what it takes, do it.
But for me, it's a lot less efficient, a lot more racing moment. If I can already stay here, when I catch the ball, I don't have to cross. I don't have to rearrange my feet, and I'm open because I'm like this. So I can stay down the middle and then take my five from under, whatever that timing is, and I can stay here, and now I'm already squared, ready to get here. If I need to get to the right, I can throw like this if I need to, but I can get as much as I'm able to get, and as long as I'm open, I can get there. So if my right foot's back, it's a lot less movement. I'm more in my throwing position from when I get back, and also I've been doing it for a while, so it's where I'm most comfortable.
You know, have a seat. Last thing, you're scaring me, man. I'm starting to really believe you.
I love it.
You know, the first person I ever saw put the right foot back was Aaron Rodgers.
Facts.
And I was on Monday Night Football, and Aaron Rodgers started doing it. Yeah. So what all young guys are doing? Hey, Aaron Rodgers got his right foot back. I'll put my right foot back.
Facts.
But I'm convinced Aaron Rodgers does it because Aaron Rodgers is just different.
And so is he. And that's what I love, man. It's like, look, Aaron Rodgers is the first person that I saw doing that. What also is Aaron Rodgers? The most efficient quarterback in league history. The next one coming, Lamar. What Lamar did this year is unbelievable. The number of touchdowns versus the number of interceptions is unbelievable. Now, here's where I can make an argument in Gruden's case. If you play out with a different style like that, then you better be able to do it when it counts. Because when it counts, the stuff that we talk about, that historically this league has had to work off of in order for you to be able to be successful on the ultimate level, you got to still be able to do that too, right? But, hey, you got me convinced. And I think that there is a possibility, there's a world that exists where Dave Canales eventually came to a point of like, you know what, that's just who this kid is, and we're not going to try to change it. We are going to allow him to be himself, and then we're going to build on top of that. That makes me extremely excited. Let's finish listening, and then we'll wrap up.
Honestly, there are definitely Aaron Rodgers things where you're just like, that's just him. Like, I don't think the footwork one is one of them though, but there are definitely things when you watch it. That was when I started watching from a learning standpoint, watching the game when I was, I don't know, middle school or whatever, and I was watching and actually trying to that's been my favorite quarterback to watch just growing up. And there were a bunch of things when I was like, oh, I gotta try it. And then now that I'm like, all right, some of that stuff I can be like taking, some of that stuff, all right, that's Aaron. Like that's him.
Well, you just be Bryce Young, man. You be you and do it, man. And just know I'm rooting for you, and you do have me feeling nicey.
Thank you.
I think that's the sentiment of the majority of the league, right? When you see someone go through the hardships that this kid has, I feel this way about other guys. I feel this way about Hurts. I like seeing guys overcome. You know what I'm saying? Like, or be themselves and not necessarily. And I'm not talking about unapologetic because Hurts is about as old school, you know, just old soul as they come. Like I heard, somebody ask a question about the music at the Super Bowl. He's like, I don't really listen to either of the artists. I'm more of a Frankie Beverly and Maze guy, right? So I do love when people are themselves, but more importantly, I love when you're okay with being the version of yourself and finding success within that, even if you don't throw for 400 or 500 yards. Like Ryan Clark had a really good point about, Jalen Hurts being on an MVP trajectory. And I agree with that. I think, a Hall of Fame trajectory. Obviously he's got a lot more work to do, to be solidified for that. But the trajectory, if where he is right now tracks to where he'll be at the end of his football career, then that means he would have went to multiple Super Bowls and probably won multiple Super Bowls, right? So they have a good setup by which to do that. That's at least until the Reaper come back. And man, watch out. Y'all, appreciate y'all coming through. I'm going to go back through and read a few of these comments, and then I'm going to bounce. Hurts wearing Kango, he's somebody's uncle in an athlete's body. That's a fact. With the Jordan hoop earring and everything. He looked like Jordan used to be in 98. All right, your boy Dre says Cathedral. He went to Cathedral High School and transferred. That's right. Yeah. Went to Cathedral and then transferred to Modern Day. That's right. Ben Watt said, I'm on the Cam part of the video. I just wish he could have used words better when he said what he said. I doubt he had guys like 89 or Greg Olsen on his mind. I do agree with that, but here's the thing, Ben. When you say something like that, if you say a blanket statement, you got to put more clarification on it. And I think that's what he's going to do on his own pod on 4th and 1. I'd be interested to see if he, because Charles Johnson had something to say. There's a lot of guys in that locker room that you would have to explain that away to. Because like I said, if we're just trying to be even, even on even, hey man, in my past, where I come from, you talked about your success. Yes, it led to you having national championships. Yes, you went undefeated, on a couple teams or whatever. But like where I came from in the NFL, when we got to this point, like I've had if you're Smith, right? If you're Steve Smith specifically, as him being one of the people that said something, and I'll be interested to see what Jonathan Stewart says. I know he goes live. He might be live right now with Believe. But look, what you had to say, man, if I'm just keeping it a buck, I had a little bit more success than you. You know what I'm saying? In the NFL, right? Doing what I did 2 different times as far as conference championships are concerned. So I didn't necessarily bring a losing mentality. But I do think that there were probably players in that locker room, without a doubt, coming off of a 2-14 season, that did kind of have that like, hey, man, 1, 2, 3 Cancun on the brain. So, I see both sides. I definitely see both sides. I'm not going to cape for one side over the other, but I see both sides. Doug said, great show. I appreciate it, man. Love the pods. Hey, I appreciate y'all. I love y'all, man. I love y'all very much. Look forward to coming back soon. Obviously there's going to be much, much more content coming. I got something coming with What's Up, Doug, really soon. One of the hardest working men in the Panther space. A lot of information. And I told you, Doug, I got a take, bro. I'm clipping it up. I got something I'm gonna bring to the table because I want to hear a little bit more explanation on it, because you kind of went far on something. I'm like, man, I got to hear a little more on this. I mean, it ain't nothing crazy, but yeah, I'm excited. So y'all will see that coming up soon. Yeah, I got a few videos that I'll be doing this week. Some of this stuff that we talked about today, I'll be clipping up and making into shorter form content, just because I feel like it deserves to have its own legs. So. All right, man. This has been another edition of the One Carolina podcast. Make sure you subscribe everywhere that you get your podcast, and also subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the like button on this video. Let's pump this one out even more to everyone so we can gain this community up even more. I'll be actually rolling out memberships pretty soon. So for those interested in becoming members of the channel, we'll be doing that again soon as well. So, or not again, but we'll be doing that soon as well. But until next time, y'all, remember, keep pounding.